Hello friends, today's question of the day, how do you know if you're doing an effective job of sharing the gospel? We get a lot of bad advice on this one and we want to follow our feelings, but scripture gives us a really clear answer to this, and we're going to look to Matthew chapter 13. And in Matthew chapter 13, Jesus tells the parable of the sower and the seeds. And essentially the parable of the sower and the seeds is a farmer goes out to plant seeds and he throws some of it he throws the seed onto the ground, kind of in a large area, and some of the seed falls on rocky ground, some of the seed gets eaten by birds, and some of it falls among thorns. And none of those seeds grow because all the problems in those types of soil prevent it from growing. What does grow? The seed that falls on fertile ground. And it's easy to look at that parable and say, oh, Jesus is telling us to make sure that we are fertile ground. Make sure we get our hearts ready so that when we hear the gospel, it'll work on us. The only problem with that is that's not what Jesus is saying. We look at Matthew chapter 13, verse 11. First in verse 10, the disciples came to him and said to him, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" In other words, they're saying, why don't you just tell them what you want them to hear? Jesus has answered. And he answered them, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to the one who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away." Jesus goes on to explain that he has designated that certain people are going to understand his word because he's changed their hearts, and certain people aren't because he hasn't. And those people who aren't can't just decide to get saved. They need Jesus to save them. So the point of the parable of the sower is to say, if you're out sharing the gospel and you're doing a good job, you're going to get a mixed reaction. Because the reaction isn't based on how good you are at sharing the gospel or how good the person who is receiving it is at receiving it. It's whether or not God has worked in their hearts to prepare their hearts to receive it. So how do you know if you're doing an effective job of sharing the gospel? A mixed reaction. If everybody thinks you're wonderful and everybody seems to agree with what you say, it's not because you're really good at it, it's because you're giving them a false gospel. And if everybody rejects it, and I mean everybody rejects it, either you're in a very anti-gospel situation for a period or a season in your life, or you're not sharing the gospel. Because the true gospel is going to have a mixed reaction, because the reaction is based on the condition of people's hearts, and we can't tell what that condition is until we share the gospel. So what should we be out there doing? Sharing the gospel. And what can we expect? We can expect a lot of different reactions. And if we get those reactions, then we know we're doing what God told us to do. I hope this has been a blessing. Have a blessed day.